How comfortable are you with the financial side of your practice? If you're not feeling too great about it, I would invite you to meet the folks over at Green Oak Accounting. Their goal is to empower private practice owners with the financial information they need to make good business decisions. They specialize in working with solo and group private practices in the mental health field. They also are uniquely positioned to help you figure out what is normal in your business finances and what is not. So be sure to check them out. Head over to greenoakaccounting.com and be sure to schedule a free consultation with them to see if they might be a good fit for you. They can help you with all your accounting needs, from bookkeeping to payroll to understanding profit first, budgeting, and forecasting. greenoakaccounting.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 149 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, friends. Glad you're here. Glad you're listening to the podcast, and glad you've joined me. And if this is your first time listening in, glad you're here. Hope you'll come back for more. And for those of you that are coming back for more, I'm glad you're back and glad you're part of this journey with me. And this year it has really felt like a journey. It's almost become too cliche to say this is a strange year, but it has been. And I think we're all just kind of muddling through at this point, trying to figure it all out and get our sea legs, and we're going to make it through. I just know we are. And so, but anyway, I'm glad you're here. Glad you're listening in, and I'm real excited for you to get to hear my guest today. This is a pretty special person in that our guest today is Elizabeth Broyhill Morris, and Elizabeth has not only become a good friend, but she's also my cousin. Elizabeth, I've known her whole life. She's the daughter of my first cousin, Melanie, on my mother's side. But anyway, you're going to get to hear more of Elizabeth's story, and I was just so thrilled that she was able to join me for this particular episode. And one of the things about doing the podcast every week is that it seems like I run into themes, and it's it's just one of those things that kind of happens. And this whole theme of self-care and being able to take care of ourselves and really be able to thrive and do well has been a theme here lately. In particular, I think for all of us during this COVID crisis that we're in, and also just our greater awareness of racism and how it's affected us in our lives, and all of those kinds of things. This theme just has bubbled up, and also just the whole theme of being more and more aware of our mental health, and just what we can do to take care of ourselves. And for those of us in this field of the mental health providers, and even for those folks that might not be specifically mental health providers that listen to the podcast, one of the things that can just kind of go by the wayside is our own self-care, because we're just really busy and focused on taking care of others. One of the things that I do as part of my daily routine is most mornings than not, I'm out hiking or walking on a green belt that is near near my home, and it's a beautiful place to walk. There are streams and waterfalls, and end up seeing a lot of wildlife. There's just deer everywhere, and turkeys, and just all of that kind of thing. And the one thing I love about being able to spend that time is it's a great way to start the day, as ease into the day, and also give myself some grounding around the things that matter most to me. And one of the podcasts, I also listen to that's my podcast time. I listen to podcasts while I'm walking and hiking. And one of the podcasts I'd like to commend to you that I discovered this week that actually my daughter turned me on to, and it's a podcast called Finding Fred. And it's really the presenter, the host of the show, is just interviewing about the significance that Fred Rogers, aka Mr. Rogers, has played in people's lives, and the fact that he has just become much more. We've kind of, even though he's been gone over 20 years now, we're really tapping into the nuggets that he left us, and all the wisdom that he had, and just particularly around how do we talk to our children about the hard things in life. And so anyway, I'll commend that particular podcast to you, specific podcast to you, and we'll try to have links here in the show notes to that podcast. But just one that I just thought I'd share with you. So, little nugget there. It's a short show in that, I think there are only 10 episodes. It was recorded last year in 2019 before any of the COVID stuff hit. So it'd be interesting. I hope they do some more episodes just around COVID, because I think the host and the guests that he has are just really pretty phenomenal. But anyway, want to get to Elizabeth here in just a minute. But before that, I would like to invite you to go over and check out one of our sponsors for today's episode, and that is TherapyNotes. And if you'll go to TherapyNotes.com, TherapyNotes is the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers and those of us in private practice. They have a patient portal that is second to none, and they're who I use in my practice. And so I can speak firsthand about how good of a platform it is. And now they have a telehealth platform built in, so you've got all of that in one place. And so be sure and check them out, therapynotes.com, and be sure and use the coupon code Gordon, just Gordon. And if you use that coupon code, if you check out their services, you can get 2 months free. So again, big thanks to Therapy Notes for being one of the sponsors of this particular episode and for this podcast. So without further ado, I want to get to my cousin and just sweet dear friend, Elizabeth Broyhill Morris. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And you just don't know how excited I am for my guest today. I will say, this particular guest I have known longer than any other guest I have ever had on the podcast. But I'm so happy to introduce you, Elizabeth Broyhill Morris, who is also my cousin. She is my second cousin. Is that correct? Or first? The backstory is Elizabeth's mother, Melanie, is my first cousin.
I think I'm your second cousin once removed.
Yes, or something like that. Yeah. Well, anyway, she's blood. I will say that. So anyway, Elizabeth, welcome. Glad you're here.
Oh my gosh, Gordon! I just was so tickled and honored that you asked me to be a part of this platform today. And I just love the work you do, and I always enjoy listening, even though I am not a therapist. It's as someone who so appreciates the therapeutic process. I think that this platform and this ministry is just radical and really important and needed.
Well, thanks. And Elizabeth and I have kind of grown up together, different different eras, maybe a little bit, but we've grown up together. I know folks on the podcast have heard me talk about going to Lake Lure, but our families have places there, and that's where we get together, and we're family there. So, I mean, the whole
holy ground.
Like I like to say, the whole family's usually there, and so
indeed,
indeed.
And this year we had a bear join us. Remember? And
our
celebration. Yeah, we did have a bear attempt to join our family cookout. So we're that much fun. Wildlife tries to join.
That's right. But I really wanted to have Elizabeth on the podcast here to talk about the work that she's doing, and just particularly around helping other women go work through their trauma. And as Elizabeth said, she's not a therapist, but what she's doing, in my mind, is very therapeutic and is another way to, if we think about it in the context of what we do as therapists, particularly those of us in private practice. There's a lot of different ways to do the work that we do. And I know there's a lot of folks that move more into coaching and that sort of thing. And that's really where Elizabeth is in her journey. And she's going to tell you some more about this. She's got a website and a blog, This is Living Hope. This is livinghope.com. If I got that correct. Yes,
that's right.
And it's a wonderful resource. And Elizabeth has come up with this great framework just around that. And we're going to be talking about that and just her journey. So as I start with everyone, Elizabeth, why don't you tell folks a little bit about your journey and how you kind of arrived where you are?
Sure. So I am one of the very fortunate people that my mother, Gordon's first cousin, her name's Melanie Broyhill, she really demystified and did not put any shame around the therapeutic process for us as kids. And I was having some struggles when I was a little girl, and she put me in with a wonderful LPC. And so that was always a really welcoming, loving, nurturing space for me. And I'm so grateful to her for that, because then as I was, an adult and hit these huge roadblocks or major bumps in life, I did not feel afraid or ashamed of reaching out and entering into relationship with a therapist. So that's something I'm particularly grateful for my mom for, because that's really shaped my life. And so I came to do the lay work, is what I call it, through a divorce in my 20s. And it was just incredibly devastating experience, to be, 28 years old and suddenly in this space when you enter into a marriage with so much hope and joy, and really a lot of expectations, right? That we place on these things in our lives of this happily ever after. And to find that just really, it wasn't even crumble, it just imploded in front of me. And I had the incredible fortune of having been working with a woman named Trish Sanders in Nashville, Tennessee. She was an LPC, and she was the angel that literally lifted me and pulled me through, little by little, through this recovery process, through that divorce. And Trish just really kind of sat down with me to say, okay, let's open this up and let's look at all of this mess that's on your side of the street. And because there's nothing you can do about the mess on his side of the street anymore. We cannot go him anymore. We've got to look at you. And that was really one of the first times I was able to start looking back through my life, at how I had been codependent, what had informed that from my childhood, and experiences that I had through my life that were little t traumatic, not big T, which, would be abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, anything like that. There's those little traumas that impact us in life and shape our framework. And I really came through that experience transformed because of the gift that this woman, Trish Sanders, had as a therapist. And so she and I became intimate friends through that. And around the same time that I moved, it was really hard to leave her, because I know, as you know, and anybody listening, there are certain clients that really cross over into a space of, intimate friendship or like a loving space, because you really kind of get so intimately connected with one another energetically and emotionally. So when we came through this, I got remarried to Scott, who's my forever husband, wonderful man, and I moved to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is where I live now. Trish and I maintained our friendship. And so I had a dear girlfriend who died by suicide. I guess it was like 2014, 2015 now. And that was unbelievably painful. And I recognized that one of the places that she had really gotten lost was where all of these things she had expected in her life were unmet. And she was about to be 50. She was never married, no children. And those things were incredibly painful for her. And I felt a really strong calling to speak to people, but in many ways, women who were losing hope. And really where they had hung on to these expectations of where I'm going to be in my life at 40, at 30, at 50, when I'm married, when I have kids, what kind of mother I'm going to be, all these things. And so I reached out to Trish and I said, I just feel this really strong calling to encapsulate what you taught me into these very specific directives. And so she and I sat down together and wrote this curriculum, what I call the practice of hope. And Trish actually passed away this past January. She and it was a painful passing for me, but just the gifts that she left me were so extraordinary. So really carry on this work to honor her. So I'll kind of close the gap here. As God always has it, there's like, you get through this big challenge and then the next one comes. And I had found motherhood to be really challenging. I have a child with, who's got some different wiring, and, that kind of stumped me up. So my, again, expectations of what motherhood would be really threw me off track. And so I had gotten stuck in the therapeutic process. I went back, I found a great therapist here in Chapel Hill, and it was like, we just kept going through my stuff. I'm like, I know my stuff. And so I came to the conclusion that therapy, as we know it, is so wonderful at remembering you or reconciling you, your past self to your present self. And what I needed was someone who was going to pull me to this future person that I so desire to be and bring her to my present. And so one of the things that as I kind of began searching through this, I recognized that's coaching. Like coaching is, okay, come to me. And so I joined this coaching program that is led by a woman who is a former social worker, and she has this large group of women and really coaches us through entrepreneurship, parenting, wellness, really about putting, women I think are bad about putting ourselves at the bottom of the totem pole, putting us at the top. And in this program, I'm also having the great delight of being able to take my work, my curriculum, the practice of hope, and to apply that, or to work with some of the women in my program now to have that an add-on, because I'm finding that really grieving unmet expectations in their lives is something that they are really stuck in.
Right.
So that's a lot, but
yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, and I think that's just. I think your story, Elizabeth, will ring true with so many people, and I think for those of us that are therapists, we can kind of neglect our own self-care, and even though we might go through, we go through hardships. You and I can talk a lot about family hardships and stuff that we go through in terms of being stuck in caregiver roles, or being, just dealing with all the stuff that life throws us. And so I think being able to, I love the way that you've kind of reframed that about really understanding who we are. One of the questions I ask clients in therapy is why do you think you are like you are? And you've done a lot of work around that.
Yeah.
And that, I think you're correct. That is the therapeutic process. And so being able to, and I love the way that you've kind of reframed that too, about really understanding your past self and bringing it to the future, but also thinking about your hopes and your dreams and bringing those to the present, and then having a way to follow through on that and to feel, because I think if we know the map to where we want to go, that's what brings hope.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. It gives us something to visualize, and it gives us something to, my beloved grandmother, Mama, who is Gordon's Aunt Jackie, passed away, so she's going to roll over in her grave, Gordon, when I say this. But, Oprah has kind of always been my Jesus, because I watched that with Mama every day when I was a little girl. And, she talks about laws of attraction and alignment, and I think that really is about laying out on paper, who is it that I have this strong desire to be? What are the desires of my heart? Because God or creation or the universe or, source or whatever your word is, does not place that on your heart, I don't think, without the intention of delivering it to you. But it's relational, right? Like, you have to be in relationship with that past self, your inner child work, all those things we call it. But you also have to be in relationship or in alignment with what you hope to be. And I think there's a big difference between hope and expectation. So when we hang our hat on it, we're putting ourselves in major, major trouble, right? Like what Trish used to always say to me, disappointments are just unmet expectations. And so I think that there's a big difference between who I'm hoping to be and who I'm expecting to be. And I think hope is the sweet spot. That's where you're kind of bringing it. That's more attainable than I think, I'm fully expecting this to happen this way.
Right. Well, yeah. And I think one thing that occurs to me as you say that is, to me, as I think about expectation, expectation is almost kind of like an other focus. It's like something outside yourself.
It's so external.
Yeah.
Right?
And so, one of the things, again, that I've done, I talk with clients about a good bit, is talking about our locus of control. Locus just simply meaning location. And people that are happiest in life have an internal locus of control. They know themselves well. They know, they know how to handle their own emotions well. They know how to handle the emotions that other people hand to them and all of that sort of thing. And so they feel more in control and happy versus somebody with an external locus of control, where they're constantly responding to what they think everybody else wants or expects.
Reactive.
Yeah. Right. And so, I don't know if that fits completely, but that's what came to mind for me. Yeah. As you were talking about
I think that fits perfectly, because really at the end of the day, like for me, like, so this is my language, right? Like that's the great I am, like that is the great internal wisdom that we all have the ability to tap into and source. And you're right, expectations are totally external. And anytime we are so outwardly focused, that we're going to get tripped up on that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I know that you've developed with your curriculum is just some, as you call, I forget what you call them now, the different
practices.
The practices. Yeah. That's it. I wanted to say, I started to say the bullet points, but the practices I like better.
Yeah. Interchange of same difference.
Yeah.
Right.
So you want to talk some about that and just kind of maybe a little bit of the backstory of how you kind of came up with those.
Sure. I'd love to do that. So I call them practices because, one of the places that I stumbled when I started having all these children that are finished being had, but there are a lot of them, is that I had really put down my practice. It's like you have to be totally focused on this, your personal therapeutic practice, and you can't put it down. I read a quote recently that Emmett Fox, who is like a metaphysical thinker that I love his work. And it's like the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And so for me, I need kind of a mantra or bullets or whatever, some real directives there, like step 1, step 2, step 3, to focus in on. And so what I did was I sat down and I really thought, okay, what was the process that Trish took me through the recovery of my divorce? Because that's going to have to be interchangeable in any moment or time of or chapter of challenge in my life. So I really sat down and meditated on that. And she had, and she laughed. She was like, well, I never thought of it this way, but if this is how you felt, what my work looked like, take it and run with it. And so for me, I call this the practice of hope. So step 1, surrender. We have to go, we're always like, I'm holding on to this daggone marriage as hard as I can. It's falling apart in my hands, crumbling like, a piece of wet Wonder Bread. But by golly, I'm not letting go of this damn thing. Excuse my language. When we can release and let it go and let go of that expectation of where I thought I would be, what I thought this would look like, that's your first step. We have to release it, let it go. When that happens, there is this moment that we usually as humans want to just skip by because we want to get moving. Like, what's next? We have to sit in the stillness of that. We have to just sit with it. This is gone. This job is gone. This marriage is gone. I've been trying to have a baby for 2 years. It's not happening. I have to let this go, and I've got to sit with the loss. Next, what immediately enters the room, and I think this is where we can really get some resistance, is the grief.
Right.
And what I have learned that what is key to moving through to a place of joy and hope, we have to process that grief. It is absolutely vital to go through the grieving process. Now, we can't get stuck there. It's not a bench we need to sit on, because as you and I know, there are a lot of people that can get stuck in that place. My spouse died, my child died, and I cannot imagine what life is going to be like otherwise. Life doesn't exist otherwise. And if we can move through that grief process, and allow that to pour out of it, we're able to then sit down and get some clarity. Okay. So my step 4 is, honesty. So really sitting down and getting honest with yourself. How did I get here? What was my contribution? What were my expectations? Get really, really honest about your part in this. And that's called honesty / accountability. We all run from accountability in a lot of ways. Step 5, curiosity. What informed that? Why was this so important to me? What in my past or my childhood or what was modeled to me that really shaped the way that I pursued this? And that's kind of that enlightenment piece. That's when all those light bulbs go off. And I think that's important because all the puzzle pieces are starting to really kind of come together. So through that curiosity process, I realized you're really putting the pieces together, and then you have to go, oh my, here's my accountability. So step 6 for me is forgiveness. And I think that there is a lot of value in, I forgive this person for hurting me. If you're going through a divorce, let's say you're going through a trauma related to a relationship. Yes, it's important to seek forgiveness, to forgive the other But I found the biggest piece for me was forgiving myself for what I had put myself through. And even if you're grieving like the loss of a child or a spouse, or heck, I've been in a coaching group that there were 2 people that were grieving the passing of their dog, which, my gosh, I've been through that process. It's horrible. But to really go, I need to forgive myself for allowing myself to stay in this place of grief, you know? So that forgiveness piece for me was huge. And I think that when we all, again, that's another piece of accountability. And, I think that's a place where you really can find some freedom because you can let it go. The shame is gone. That weight around your neck is gone. So that is step number 6 is forgiveness. So number 7, here comes your freedom piece, when you can really step into the practice of resilience. So I called number 7, the practice of resilience. That's where you kind of pull those bootstraps up. That's when you stand up and move forward, walk forward into, you know, fresh new air. And then that leads you straight into this, what I call the ultimate practice of hope is joy. And where you can step into a space of just complete release, freedom, and joy, which is an incredibly loving place to be. So that is the curriculum that I learned from Trish, and she gifted that to me and said, she's like, never was any of that crossing my mind, but is that what you received from me? Take it, it's yours. And so I have this curriculum with some specific exercises that help people move through this space. And it's something that when I am challenged, I kind of go, okay, I'm really stuck here. I've got to, 1, practice surrender. Number 2, I've got to practice the stillness. I'm going to sit here, sit with this. I'm going to sit in stillness, you know, and I move through it. And it really, really is helpful to have these kind of like cues of, got to get honest with myself here. Need some accountability.
Right.
And, so anyway, that has been Trish's gift to me, and this is how I honor her and carry on her great work that she's done here in this plane. And and it's special for me to be able to honor someone who really gave me life back through a really traumatic and challenging time.
Right. Well, I love that. I love that framework, and I like, you know, I think it is. I think when people are hurting, we need something that's going to give us some structure to some degree. And I think that's one of the things that I like about this is just being able to say, okay, here are the steps. You know, when we're in crisis, I think one of the things that is really essential is just to slow down enough to kind of get the landscape. And you know, I love the framework in that it gives people stepping stones. Okay, this is where you go next. This is what you do next, that sort of thing. And I'm sure for, you know, but like, you know, and I love the emphasis on grief as well. I mean, because grief to me is at the heart of everything we struggle with as human beings and emotionally. I mean, it all comes down to grief and loss and being able to, you know, work through that. So, love that. I love that. So
good.
Yeah. So Elizabeth, we want to be respectful of your time, and I know we'll be having lots more conversations, and I'm sure you will be back here on the podcast at some point.
Oh, I hope so.
Yes, I hope so. So tell folks again how they can get in touch with you and where the website is and that sort of thing.
Sure. So the website is www.thisisLivingHope.com. And you can email me at elizabeth@thisisLivingHope.com. And we're on Instagram. Our handle is @thisisLivingHope. And, you know, I'll be fully transparent. It's a space that I have really been doing more just like one-on-one. And we have, when I had my second and third child, I was not able to be as present with the social media and the website. But that's something I'm picking back up now that life is getting a little less intense with little children.
Yeah.
But that's where you can find me. And I do want to say, Gordon, just what you do through this podcast is remarkable, and just knowing who your audience is. You know, this is such a calling to be able to meet people at their lowest and their darkest, and to throw out a rope and say, I've got you, and we're going to get you through this. I think that anyone who is willing to sit with the grief and loss of other people and to do the incredible work that therapists do, it is such an incredible calling and ministry. And so I just want to thank all the ears that are here on this podcast for what you do for all of the clients that you meet with each day. You're giving life back to people, and it's enormous. So thank you for what you do and your colleagues. And thanks for giving me a little bit of space to talk about my experience.
Yes. And we'll have all those links in the show notes and the show summary for easy access for folks. So I'm sure I will see you in the coming weeks, Elizabeth. So we'll be able to be back together. I know a lot. For some of us, we get to the lake on Thanksgiving, so maybe.
I know that's our plan too. So hopefully if we can all do that. We were there last weekend, and the leaves are not quite changing yet. But they will be soon.
They will be. It's starting to change. So, all right. Well, take care,
all right, dear.
My dear cousin, and we'll talk again. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed getting to meet my cousin, Elizabeth Broyhill Morris. And I'm so grateful to her for being on the podcast. I'm glad we've been talking about it for about a year now. And we finally made it happen. So anyway, I'm glad she joined me for the podcast. And be sure and check out her website and the resources she's got. It's a wonderful resource to share with not only with your clients, but I think for a lot of us, it's a great resource for ourselves. And her website again is thisisLivingHope.com. And she's got that wonderful guide there that I commend to you. And just she's put a lot of thought and work into this. And I think you're going to be hearing more from Elizabeth here in the future. So, and I'm sure I'll have her back on the podcast at some point. So be sure and check all of that out. One thing I forgot to mention, or just kind of tell you about at the very beginning of the podcast, is if those of you that have been that have gotten the G Suite for Therapists course that's still out there, G Suite for Therapists. And if you go to practiceoftherapy.com/G Suite course, you can still get that. I've talked about it before, but I really am starting to work on some updates for that. Google has just gone through a lot of changes here lately in terms of, I just got an email this past week that they're changing their branding to some degree. And so the term G Suite, I think, is going to go away. And what you're going to hear instead is Google for Work. Google Workspace, I think, is what they're calling it now, Google Workspace. And so I'm going to be making some changes. But one of the things I'll say about the course is, even though I put the course out a few years ago, a lot of the stuff that's in there is still relevant. And if you get the course now, go ahead and purchase it. You'll get the updates automatically when it comes out, and there's no extra charge for the updates. But once I come out with the course, I am going to go up on the price some. So take advantage of the current price at G Suite for Therapists course. It's an e-course, self-paced course, and it'll teach you how to use the tools of Google for your practice, in terms of building a practice platform for yourself and dashboards and all that kind of thing to really help you track the business side of your practice well, and also just connect with clients well through that. So anyway, I just wanted to commend that to you. Also, be sure and check out the sponsors of today's podcast, Green Oak Accounting, greenoakaccounting.com. Julie Harris and her team do a wonderful job, and they're second to none in terms of being the experts in the financial side of private practice. They work exclusively with mental health providers and those of us in private practice. That's their specialty. So be sure and check them out, greenoakaccounting.com, and let them know you heard about them here on the podcast. And as always, our great sponsor, TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com. They're the #1 electronic health record system for mental health providers, and they're who I use in my practice. And you can use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, to get 2 months of their services for free. So be sure and check those sponsors out. So thanks, folks, for joining me today. And again, I can't thank Elizabeth enough for being on the podcast. Be sure and subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it, whether it be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. We're also on Amazon and Audible now, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. I'm sure I'm leaving some others out, but we're out there most everywhere. But take time to subscribe wherever you might be listening to it, and leave us a review, and also give us a rating. So that way it helps boost us a little bit, and that way other people can find out about it. And be sure to share with others the fact that you're listening to the podcast and send them our way. So take care, folks. Hope you have a good rest of your week or weekend whenever you might be listening to this. And stay safe out there. Keep yourself healthy. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Do all those things that we know we need to do in order to be healthy and safe, and not only for ourselves, but for those that we care about and just those around us. So take care, folks. Have a great rest of your weekend, whenever you might be listening to this. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free Private Practice Startup Guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.